Welcome back to the AM show. Time for us to go into the papers and to review what they're reporting this morning. And I'll be joined by lawyer Kweku Pintel, who is already joining us via Zoom, and he is already with us. Lawyer, good morning. I trust all is well.
Good morning. Okay. Yes.
Great to have
Everything is cool running, yes.
Okay. Now I have with me the Daily Graphic, the New Crusading Guide, the Daily Guide newspaper, and the Hawk. Let's start off with the Daily Graphic. Now it says 22 assemblies spend 2.4 million, collect 1.3 million cedis in revenue. Also, 20,000 street lights for Greater Accra region ready. That's according to the regional minister. 100 million cedis voted for tourism enterprises. And it has a picture of the tourism minister, Dr. Ibrahim Mohammed Awal. Okay, so let's start with the tourism story because now the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture has set aside 100 million cedis to promote youth-led tourism enterprises. This is in view of the tremendous contribution to the sector is making to the economy and development of the country. The Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture, Dr. Ibrahim Mohammed Awal, who disclosed this in Accra yesterday, said the government, through his outfit, was poised to change the narrative as far as tourism, arts, and the development of culture was concerned. Speaking at a forum with selected editors, he stated that the ministry would also train 6,000 young people along the tourism value chain on customer orientation as part of effort to improve the sector. The increased attention on tourism stems from its high prospect, which is now the third leading contributor to the country's gross domestic product, GDP. The sector contributed about $3.1 billion in 2021 alone. The sector is projected to contribute about $4 billion to the GDP by 2025. That is a huge one. How do we ensure, because in this country, anytime we devote some monies to help in the development of a sector, the implementation becomes a bit problematic. How do we ensure the effective implementation of this particular amount?
I would think that when these monies become available, I would rather that the government would rather have some bank. I will use a bank, a financial institution manage these funds on behalf of government.
Okay.
Because every time that the government has to manage funds of this nature, it becomes typically a political issue. And what it means is that it's party fanatics who eventually get this money. Then the criteria for disbursing the funds are not clearly defined. Or even when they are defined, people see it as government funds, and when they take it, that becomes the end of it. They know that their own way of getting some money through party means, and that's about the only reason why some of these funds cannot become recurring. In other words, cannot be invested and yield, dividends or profits, and the whole thing benefits government. So my own take of this matter is that when these funds become available, I would rather that the government should not disburse it. The government agency must not disburse it. It must go to some financial institution. I'm not even talking about any special institution set up by government. The funds should go to a financial institution whose business it is to manage funds and knows how to make profit out of managing funds. That's my own take on this matter. Yes.
The idea is also to help young businesses in the sector. You've mentioned that normally it becomes party fanatics who benefit from this. So what would be your proposal in a way, aside the bank, how do we ensure that the real people in the sector, the young people in there, are getting the support and not, as you put it, party fanatics?
Yeah, let me put it this way. Whichever way it is, a loan is a loan. And it's the ability to repay the loan that makes the funds, worthy of it. And so it's like me and you, anyone, people come to you, they are looking for a loan. I ask people, to demonstrate to me how they intend to use the money. You want a loan for what? I mean, what's the project? What is it that you have in mind? What are the projections? What exactly do you want to do? I mean, people must go through these things. I'm not saying that maybe the way of the disbursing funds are not done along this type of lines, but it comes back to the issue. Whether you are young, whether you are old, I quite understand. And maybe the guarantee or security may not be the same, but it has to be done in such a way that it can be monitored. It has to be done in such a way that somebody can ensure that, I mean, there's a yardstick for measuring how the funds are used and how the funds are repaid, and how to go after the people who take this, who are the beneficiaries of these facilities that come in. That's the yardstick. That is the standard. Whether indeed it is disbursed by a bank or it is disbursed by a financial institution. These are the measurements. In other words, what do you want it for? What exactly? What is the project? Is it in writing? And how can we follow? At least you convince me on paper that this is how you intend to use it. Convince me on paper that when you put this much to the whatever enterprise that you want to do over a certain period of time, this is what you're going to yield. How much is going to come out? How are you able to repay? That somebody must convince somebody, at least on paper. So that if we are not able to run it the way that it does, then at the end of the day,
all right. Looks like we're having challenges with lawyer's line, but we'll try and rectify it so we can have a smooth conversation with lawyer Kweku Petula. He's our guest on the news review segment of the AM show here on the Joy News channel. Well, we understand that report. I mean, one other story in the Daily Graphic says 200,000 street lights for Greater Accra ready. Now, the story is written by Joshua Bediako Kumsen, and it reads that the Greater Accra Regional Coordinating Council has procured 20,000 street lights to be distributed and installed in the various metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies in the Greater Accra region. This is to improve the lighting system and security in the region. Currently, the council is collating a list of all the electoral areas within the region to help draw an itinerary with contractors to fix the light. The Greater Accra Regional Minister, Henry Korte, announced this yesterday at the annual Greater Accra Regional Coordinating Council meeting held in fulfillment of Section 191 of the Local Governance Act 2016 Act 936. He said the two metropolises in the region, the Accra Metropolitan Assembly and the Tema Metropolitan Assembly, would each receive 600 street lights, while the various municipalities get 400 each. In addition, Mr. Korte said district assemblies would also receive 300 street lights each. Well, I'm sure for those of us who live in the city and how dark it becomes in the night, this would obviously be good news. But how do we move on from here? Lawyer Kweku Petula is still with us. Lawyer, I guess I guess all is well now. You might want to complete your statement and then we'll move on to the next subject.
Yeah, but you know, we are doing a newspaper review and you notice our internet is playing up, and we have a National Communication Authority, a National Communication Authority in this country who sees everything right with these things. I swear, I remember one of the times I was in the UK and Vodafone UK had been fined a huge amount for disruption in services and poor services. And those poor services.
And I agree with lawyer there that in this country, service providers do anything they like and they go scot-free. Nobody really does anything to them because you buy expensive data, yet the sort of service you get is quite questionable. Anyway, now the story on the 20,000 street light says the meeting brought together all the MMDCs in the region and their presiding members to discuss development and challenges confronting their respective areas. The common issues that came up at the meeting included sanitation, flooding, congestion, deplorable roads, and chieftaincy. The MMDCs also updated the minister on some of the ongoing projects in their respective assemblies and the levels of completion so far. Now, sometimes you wonder why would sit and allow darkness to engulf our cities, and it will take a certain meeting for us to then be given a briefing that some street lights have been procured. Why that? Why do we need to allow people to live and drive in darkness with all of it attendant negative impact before we are told that, a number of street lights have been procured? This should be a regular happening, that when there is a street light that is malfunctioning in a certain corner, it is replaced quickly. We don't need for darkness to engulf the city and it will take a certain meeting, then an announcement to be made that there's a number of street lights have been procured. But yeah, lawyer, we now have you on phone because data or the internet is not stable, so we have to bring you on phone. Well, so you wrap up on your thought, and then we move on to the next subject.
Yeah, the real issue is not the fact that government is providing street lights. The real issue, whose responsibility is it to provide a street light? If you take any time you take your bill from ECG, there's a portion of the bill that goes for street lighting. In other words, we pay for it. And therefore, the fact that ECG will allow this country and this city to be in darkness all the time, half of the time, and by so doing, facilitating all kinds of, evil doing, if I may put it as blunt as that. It is the real issue. And let me tell you, let me provide my solution to that. Whilst we commend government or the minister for that effort, I think we do respect. It's a misplace of government funds. It's a misplace of our dear funds. At the end of the day, ECG takes the money to provide a street light, and they don't do it. And then they're going to take money from elsewhere. And next year, you're going to see this one at a public accounts committee, and somebody's going to ask, why did you take this money to do this thing? When it is not part of the responsibility of government to do that, because we are already paying for it. So what does ECG, what does it use the money for? These are the real issues in this country. We take money because it's available, and we use it for this because we think it's convenient. But then somebody is taking the money, and they are not accounting for it. And that's the real issue. So much as I may commend the government for that initiative, the real truth is we must vote. What do they use our money that they collect for street lighting? What do they use it for? They don't account for us. My prescription for all of this is that I think Ghanaians must cultivate a habit when we sue almost every utility provider, every government institution for some of these things, because they take it for granted. We have a million roads and highways, we have all whatever, then we have potholes all over the place, people pesticides and whatever, and we complain, and nobody appears to be looking at that. Because here, issues of negligence and whatever, it doesn't really mean much to anybody. So we inflict ourselves year in, year out with all manner of things that people by legislation and by their mandate are required to do. And when they are not doing it, we're not questioning it. And at the end of it, some government official would then try to fix it. So the solution is not permanent. The solution is never in order. Because that is not the business of government. That's my view of the matter. Based on the arrangements in place that I already know. So we can move on.
All right. Now, a story. This is also one story that's of heavy interest. 22 assemblies spend 2.4 million cedis, collect 1.3 million in revenue. Now, 22 local assemblies have been indicted for inefficiencies in revenue collection. This is contained in the Auditor General's report on the audit of the Metropolitan Municipal and District Assemblies for last year. While the assemblies paid 2.4 million cedis as salaries to 129 revenue collectors, they collected 1.3 million cedis as revenue between January 2022 and December 2022. The collections represented 55.02% of the salaries of the collectors, leading to a shortfall of about 1.5 million cedis. So we are not getting money from those revenues. We are rather spending. And this is an annual affair. How do we get out of this rat race?
Yeah, every time that we talk of corruption, the perception is somebody profits. In other words, somebody takes money, puts in his pocket. But corruption is much wider. Corruption goes beyond physically, people benefiting directly. But inefficiency, incompetency, mismanagement, in terms of negligence, because he who knows how to do a thing but does not do it, it also causes as much harm as the one who willfully, benefits from doing something that he does. So this is a clear case of incompetence coupled with negligence, coupled with mismanagement. And of course, it has to be fixed. Somebody has to study what really happened. Please, it's not all the time that we may say somebody has profited by it. But the point I'm making is that negligence is as good as the one who takes the money and puts it in his pocket. So there may be as well a good case for what they did. But then having done it and having seen that it did not yield the desired result, maybe they have to study their system very well and try to improve it. It's part of governance. It's not everything that government does that government is going to, make a profit out of it or, achieve the desired result. But the whole of governance is studying your weaknesses, studying the way you do things, and learning from your mistakes and trying to move forward. So that's about all that I would say. Somebody must look at.
But lawyer, isn't it time that we probably align salaries with productivity? For example, you spend 2.4 million cedis in paying revenue collectors, and they were only able to collect 1.3 million cedis. That is really something that should awaken the consciousness of these assemblies to say, well, we'll peg your payment to how much you bring in. A percentage of how much you collect is what you earn. Isn't it time we look at that arrangement?
I wouldn't know whether we can do it over the nation as a whole. I don't know whether this is one off of such a transaction. In other words, we have not been told for previous years what they managed to do. But the real point I'm making is that tying somebody's salary to what he does or earns, we call it commissioned agent. In other words, a person earns a commission. It's an option for the assemblies to try. And who knows, if they did so, possibly their revenue may be boosted sufficiently, for them to be able to adopt it as a way of managing their revenues along those lines. So I will not go straight ahead and accuse anybody of corruption at this stage. I would think that maybe it's a one-time transaction that went so bad, maybe because things were not monitored so properly.
Okay.
But I agree with you that appointing commission agents or people who work for commission is a very effective way, particularly of managing revenues to the assembly.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, before I put aside the Daily Graphic, but lawyer, I don't know the university you attended, but I went to the University of Cape Coast.
There's only one university in Ghana. They call it the University of Ghana.
No. Okay, don't let us start this argument, because in fact that one is a contested, contestable point of view. But the only university of competitive choice in this country, we all know, is UCC. And today, management staff, a student of the University of Cape Coast, we are all celebrating Miss Rose Amwenima Yeboah for winning the first ever gold medal. Lawyer, the only university that has won Ghana's first ever gold medal in women's high jump event for Ghana at the just ended International University Sports Federation's Summer World University Games in Chengdu, China. Aiko Motna, yeah. So yeah, that's it. And lawyer, we are among top 400 globally universities, number 1 in Ghana, number 1 in West Africa. We are 4th university in Africa, and number 24 globally for research influence. So that's by way of just informing you, lawyer. Let's move on to another paper.
We call it top government official refuses to comment.
Okay, let's look at the Daily Guide newspaper. It says, tall boss resigns, Mahama condemns coups, BOG not mandated to report to Parliament. That's according to Majority Leader. Emisatha takes on Western Chiefs. Okay, let's deal with Mahama. It says the flag bearer of the opposition, National Democratic Congress, John Dramani Mahama, has publicly denounced coups, the illegal and overt attempt by the military to unseat an incumbent leader, saying, quote, constitutional governance is still best, unquote. According to him, constitutional governance empowers citizens to change their leaders peacefully if they believe they are not functioning in their best interests. His remarks follows the recent takeover in Niger, which was spearheaded by soldiers from the presidential guard and is only the latest in series of coups in recent years in Africa. Now, lawyer, I've heard most people say that it serves as a notice for the constitutionally elected government, especially the president, not to toy with the various countries' constitution, and also to govern according to the interests of the people, because that is how you prevent all of this from happening. I'm sure you followed what's happening in West Africa, and you've probably seen the similar undertones happening. How do you think West Africa can deal with these rising number of coups that are happening across the sub-region?
At first, I commend President Mahama, President Mahama, for the comments that he made, and it's quite significant that he, being the flag bearer of the National Democratic Congress, which has its history, the whole party is built on the foundations of a coup. And if he comes out to make that statement, it is a plus for Ghana's democracy, and I appreciate him for that. Now, talking about what's going on in Niger and what's going on in West African countries, you see, there's a pretense. Some people think that a democratic government becomes democratic merely because it went through the processes of being elected and so forth and so on. That's point number one. The whole of governance is for those who govern to appreciate that they are fallible, like you and I, and that the whole idea of governance is trying to reduce or minimize errors that human beings make. No government can pretend to be infallible. That's the foundation of democracy. And so this business that have arisen, where people think that for some reason, if government has erred, if government is going off track, or if government is somehow not behaving in accordance with the democratic temper or governance, then somehow it gives a right to the military. And I like what Mahama said, because he said, on the whole, at the end of the day, for instance, in Ghana, it's about time that we make what we call a comparative analysis. Because you see, these soldiers that have come in Niger, all the people who are demonstrating, give 1 year. These people cannot even come out to demonstrate either way, whether in favor or against them. That's what people really don't sit down and look at the long-term effects of these things. The military, when they come, they are worse. The record in Africa is that they are worse in governance than the civilians. The real question that I've been asking myself over the last 2 or 3 weeks is, you notice that almost all the officer corps of African military, they tell us, we went to Sahel, we went to this. They are trained by colonial masters. So I've been wondering, what is it in the training that they give to our African soldiers, the elite of our African soldiers, that when they come back, their mind is turned upon constituting themselves into a power block to determine how long or how short a government stay. When the same soldiers who went to the same training institutions in those foreign countries, they dare not think of those things. There is something that is going on that is about time that we begin to examine it. You know what I'm saying? It's much deeper. I'm being honest with you. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been reflecting. When you walk on the road in Britain, in the streets in Britain, the soldiers, they even don't try to dress. In Ghana, a typical soldier is dressed and overdressed, and everybody who goes to a shaman to beat anybody. But that discipline, that indiscipline, is never shown anywhere in the Western world. They went to the same schools. So there is something wrong in the way our soldiers were trained. I'm being honest with you. Unless we get to that point, Ghana has been independent for how many years now? I'm sure the same curriculum that has been used for how many years, which was developed by the British for training our soldiers to make themselves a power block and all of that. Something got to change in this country. And of course, in other African countries. But please, for those who are celebrating military as a way of removing democratic government, let them go on. They haven't seen anything before. 1979, I was a sixth former. I know what it is to go through a country with soldiers, doing all manner of things. All of a sudden, the soldier becomes an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-everything. And then they subject the citizens, they molest, they do all kinds of things. So please, in the name of Jesus, I pray that this thing will never be part of our history. Those who are celebrating it, maybe they don't know. They are the intellectuals. But they become the intellectuals in the cloakroom of these African dictators. And they ensure that they are never taught. But the history of Ghana will show you that sooner than later, the babies of the revolution, they are eaten by the revolution itself. We have a history in this country. Those who do not know, they should go to University of Ghana bookshop. There are lots of books on the coup in Ghana and all of these things. They should go and read very carefully and take useful lessons and know that you cannot encourage a soldier to betray a government and all of a sudden the soldier, at the end of the day, they also want power. So the real issue is whether the military in Africa can also use coups as a way of retaining power and ruling and so forth and so on. That's my take. It's a horrible thing, and it's about how we deal with it as an institutional issue. The training our soldiers receive, the training, we should go back to it. That's my take on this issue.
Okay. Now, there's a story on page 6 of the Daily Guide newspaper. It says, Emisatha takes on Western chiefs. And the story is written by Emmanuel Opoku from Buzia. Now, former Second Lady, Mrs. Matilda Emisatha, has taken a swipe at chiefs in the Western region for allegedly doing little to help halt the activities of illegal mining in the region. Mrs. Emisatha, who hailed from the region, was speaking as a guest of honor at the opening of the Western Region Development Conference under the auspices of the Nana Kwabena Nketia IV Trust held at Busia in the Ahanta West Municipality. Now, the 5-day conference is on the theme, Driving Inclusive and Equitable Development in the Western Region. Now, she says, and this is a quote from her, to sum up the state of affairs in the Western Region, I would like to quote what a friend I took to Newtown, a border area near Hafasini. This friend asked me, are we in Ghana? Because there were no good roads, she added. She said the schools were in sorry state. Most of the towns had no potable water. There were also abandoned drains and gutters which had become death traps. Quote, our region has been neglected and is helpless to the extent that there is no legacy that we are leaving anybody, unquote, she asserted. Lawyer, I don't know how well you know the Western region, but what do you make of what the former Second Lady is telling the chiefs of the Western region, especially about roads which are in bad state and all of that?
I think I wholeheartedly agree with her. Her comments are right. And sometimes it's embarrassing. Sometimes I do not know how to call some of these things. The places where we got the best of everything turn out to have the worst of everything. And sometimes you look at it and it's unbelievable. First is the guarantee issue. Ghana has a peculiar landscape where almost every piece of land, except those which are acquired by the Ghana government through an executive instrument, every land is owned by a school or a family. Every land in this country. What it means is that somebody takes direct control over the land. And in terms of even conveyancing, it has to move from a chief before it goes to an individual. It has to move from a family before it goes to an individual. So at the end of the day, we are looking at how we have all conspired to ensure that we have no control over our own land, over our natural resources. And the joke of this whole thing is that for all the people who are decimating and, subjecting our lands to all these things, we don't even see the money that they make. We don't know where they take it to. There's nothing absolutely significant about any of these people. You can't go into any community and be shown an edifice constructed by these galamseyers or whatever. So, sometimes it's very puzzling. It is very, very puzzling. And the roads and everything that is the Western region. As a matter of fact, I only know how to start right there a few times that I go inside. But I mean, what I've heard is enough to show that the Western region was the basket, whatever, of this country, the food basket of Ghana. I mean, it's in this deplorable state. And I wouldn't know what is it that we need to do that we haven't done. But it really calls for action by the chiefs, because the chiefs are the rulers or the people, the overlords of all these communities. And until the chiefs come together, they have traditional councils, they have regional, traditional councils, and so forth and so on. Unless they see it as an agenda and draw up an agenda and take action at the local level, there's a limit to what government can do. You know, every time in this country, everybody's about government. I think it's a shame that at this time in our life or political life, we still think that government ought to be responsible for everything. It cannot be. And it's about time that we realize that those at the local level ought to take responsibility. And when we talk about that, we're talking about these kids in their communities. It's about time that their own citizens started. You know, all these demonstrations we have about government, you never heard about any people demonstrating against their chiefs. Because if the chiefs do not allow the people who come into the community, they will not even be there. So because we believe that government is everything, now that even elections coming around, this is a time for political terrorism. People are making, if you don't do this for us, we will not vote. When they themselves, they know there's a minimum requirement of the things that they themselves can even do to attract the government into the community.
Okay.
But that is not to share government's responsibility overall. But I'm thinking that at the local level, I'm not too sure that our chiefs are doing enough at all. That's my personal view about this matter.
Okay. But I guess as for the roads, which are so terrible in the Western region, as for that, the government needs to know that when you are cutting your manganese to the port, you are cutting your bauxite to the port, you are cutting all of those minerals and all of those precious things that we export. And that road, which is, of course, an ECOWAS road, a very important road, you don't need a chief to tell you that you need to fix the road, do you?
No, it's about the companies. It's about the companies who've got all those contracts. The real issue is we've got a Minerals Commission, we've got the Ghana Investment Promotion Council, we've got all these institutions who are the ones who enter into all these contracts. What is the social contract that these people have under those agreements? Why did they take all the money without any responsibility whatsoever? I mean, the revenue that government makes out of these things, the contract, it's about time that we examine these contracts to know what portion of these funds. You know, I remember some time back, somebody did a contract between Johannesburg and Obuasi and showed us the difference. It's the same, you know, I don't know how else to describe it. It's the same funds, the same revenue government generates from these things that they use for. So there's everything going to a central account. No portion is left for the development of these roads. And the companies themselves, I do not know. But I know that they have social contracts in the communities, and the chiefs and those places in those communities. It's about time that they started to take an interest in the contracts that the central government, because let me put it this way, as a matter of law, every mineral that is found any part of this country, it divests the owner of the land of any interest in it, and it goes directly to government. So the real issue is what role, what place does what the chiefs have in these contracts when they are drawn up. Maybe it's about time that these chiefs started to sit down with government, look at these contracts, began to see what the portion of these funds that are generated from these contracts are compulsorily employed into their community by way of development. That is a critical area. I mean, that I believe that our chiefs must be demanding from the central government.
Okay, all right, lawyer.
Yes.
So I'm great. I mean, those are fantastic points that you raised there, and I'm grateful that you could find time to join us this morning on our news review. So that's the news review, but it was brought to you by courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and we're offering prostate screening and free female fertility screening. We are located at Accra Spintex opposite Shell signboard in Kumasi Chronom Abohia behind Angel Educational Complex. And in Takrade, we are in the Anaje estate in Tema Finance at Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, Esiama in the Inzima area. You can give us a call on 0244 867068 or 0274 234321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic diseases. And we're grateful to them for supporting us. Greetings to Dr. Amwakohene and family in the state of Connecticut in the USA. Your good works for humanity shall never be in vain. God bless you. And it's coming from my producer, Kingsley, a very good man himself. So that's it. But we have more coming your way here on the AM show. So don't go away. Stay with us.